Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to B4 Live, where this afternoon we have the second in a series of talks from the wonderful Diane Wilkinson. She asked me to say something nice about her, so there you go, Diane. Is that enough? No, Diane's been working with us at B4 for a year or so now. Been excellent support in helping our team work better together, and that's a great testament to Diane that the team is working splendidly together during this difficult period. So thank you to you, Diane. How is everybody today? Good. How are you, Tim? We can see your nose up, Tim. There you go.
Hello. I'm okay. How are you?
Good. Brilliant. Morning, Isabel. How are you? Good afternoon, Isabel. You okay?
Yes, I'm all right. Thank you very much. Nice to see everybody.
Nice to see you, Sam. If everybody else, it's up to you whether excuse me, you'd like to come on camera or stay behind your black screen. Up to you. But it'd be good for you to join us if you'd like to. So Diane, leading teams through change and making us more resilient. What have you got for today?
Thank you very much, Richard. Can you hear me clearly, everybody?
We can hear you perfectly clearly.
Relief. I ran a webinar earlier today and the sound did that technology boing, so it was a real challenge. So what I wonder if we pause now, and Isabel and Tim, have you got a question that you're curious about in leading your teams through change? Isabel, I gather you from Rhodes. You can hear where my accent is from.
Yes, we
not Greece.
We met very briefly, I think, at Blenheim last year, and that was a pleasure for me. And do I have a question? No, I think not particularly. We are changing in many ways at Rhodes, both in a physical dimension and in the way that we're working. And there are sort of moves with new office layouts and different processes as well, and different space. So lots of change for us, lots of change.
Fab, that's good to hear. Yeah. And Tim, in your situation in Sobel House, do you have a question that you're curious about?
I think we're a new team, a fairly new team. So it's more just listening to what you've got to say about that. I was actually listening a long conversation with my immediate line manager this morning, talking about a few issues about managing people remotely as well, and how we're all different individuals. We need to try and work together. That's how it goes, isn't it? So I think we're struggling. Elements of our team might be struggling a bit through the whole change bit, but for many of us, I think we find it quite funny as well, really. It's quite fun, some of the stuff we're doing.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? That in this change, it sometimes can be fun. So thanks, that's helpful just to give me a point about where you're at. So let's have a look at, can you see leading teams through change? Give me a thumbs up if that's
yes,
the slide
we can.
You can see.
Yeah.
Oh, fab. Okay. It's always a relief at this stage. So let's have a look at what we're going to be covering today. And firstly, we're going to look at that. What is the natural human response to change? And then look at actually in teams, how can we deal with the resistance that we sometimes can find? So Tim, an interesting point you said, some people find change fun and love it, and really the best comes out of them. But actually what happens when there is that resistance? And then the third aspect that we're going to be covering today is the making endings, and looking at an interesting model of how can we make good endings, because often we need to do that in times of change. Say goodbye to the old normal and embrace the new normal. We're all hearing so much about that, are we not? I love this quote that in life, often it's the hard stuff that's easy. You know, here we are now doing webinars. I've got 2 screens. I didn't have that before. But actually it's the soft stuff that's hard. And the soft stuff is a lot more important than the hard stuff. And Tom Malone says that. He's from a carpeting and flooring company based originally in America. So let's look at this human response to change. And often initially there is that shock and denial. And then there can be anger, blame, and bargaining, where we really started dipping down, we might say, as the graph shows as well. And what is our performance? If we see on the right-hand side of this graph, that actually our performance can really dip down, and we just get into that mode. And the tricky part is at the bottom of this graph, where that apathy is. And before we move on, if we can, to acceptance and exploring the opportunities and seeing the opportunities that are there and beginning to explore them, before they then integrate and into the word we're hearing a lot of, the new normal. And then people often have hope. So I'm fascinated by my own response in this, which is on the 20th of March, the 3 days before lockdown on the Monday, I lost 3 months of work. I was in total shock. And I have spent a month developing these webinars and shifting my whole business to online. And so that shock really, I wonder, yes, the anger, blame, bargaining, what I was doing before I got to this point a month later, or is it 5 weeks later, where I'm now delivering webinars and workshops I used to deliver. So I found this a very interesting and helpful model. And Tim, I wonder if you might give us the name of where this model originally came from. So let's at this stage pause, and I'm going to stop sharing the slides and ask, where are you each regarding COVID-19 on that response curve this week? And Tim, would you give us a clue if you know who the model is originally devised by, as in Sobel House Specializers? Do you know, Tim?
I don't, sorry.
Sorry to embarrass you. So it's Kubler-Ross is her name, and a wonderful woman in the hospice movement.
Right.
And she designed this curve. But the clue is, because I work with organizations, I don't ever put up there, this is the Kubler-Ross grief curve. I put this, and it is our natural human response to change. So I use it working with teams and organizations, and that's why I'm bringing that today. So my question to you is, where are you regarding COVID? And on that response curve, would you say? Tim, where would you say you are?
Well, I think I came through it fairly quickly, really. I think I had to sort of leave the office because our eldest had a cough about 5 weeks ago. So I was the first one to sort of go and self-isolate. I felt a bit low for the first couple of days, but I think predominantly, I've travelled through the curve fairly quickly, really.
Right.
But,
so interesting, Tim, that you, is that Sam? I don't know your...
No, it's Becca, our eldest. She's 18. Yeah,
right, okay.
So
we all know Sam now, who did the marathon with you.
Yeah, no, the younger one, the elder one doesn't get up till about 1 o'clock.
Right. So interesting that you actually, maybe compared to the rest of us, you really were in that initial, oh my goodness, there's a cough.
Well, I was, because I didn't think I suppose I was in a position where I didn't have as many I've got responsibilities to family, but not for, I've been paid. So I suppose that in a way I didn't have that particular stress level.
Sure.
And I'm grateful for that as well. It's to be grateful for that.
Yeah. Isabel, what about you? Where would you say, I don't know, in terms of Rhodes House, in terms of you yourself, where are you on that response curve, if you'd like to say?
Well, I think I came through it quite quickly too. So like Tim, we are hugely fortunate that Rhodes is continuing to pay us. We were also fortunate in that we were only taking, I run events so at Rhodes House, so amongst other things. So we were only taking events until the 30th of June because we are planning some fairly major building works. So as opposed to other venues in Oxford, we only had to cancel, in a sense, you know, in April, May, June. So we actually moved quite quickly into the projects which were on the horizon for the new build, how we deal with this and so on. So the events team has actually, you know, it had some immediate work to do in cancellations, and now we're moving on to the next phase. So I think work-wise, we came through it quite quickly. I what I find quite interesting is the nature of the team in events. We're quite sociable. Our work revolves around people, seeing people, exchanging with people, and the remote quality of the current work scenario is actually what's slightly dragging us down. You know, I feel that I'm doing a lot of keeping the team going in that way. But I think we came through your curve quite quickly.
Isabel, what I find interesting, so has the building started earlier? Is that what you're saying?
No, the building hasn't started earlier because, in fact, we're still waiting for official planning consent. But so it was due to start in the course of the summer. But projects for us looking at, so we're looking at new event management systems, room booking systems. That's what I've spent the last 2 hours on a demonstration. And, you know, it's sort of projects internally, you know, on the catering side, on the front of house, on the services. So we're starting to do pieces of work on each of those projects. So, you know, that's we can talk about it amongst ourselves. We can put documents together, go out there looking for, you know, catering services and so on. So we have content to do. It's just not, and we are by nature doers. So that's all fine, you know, but it's just the kind of, you know, we're a good team. We're quite a close team. And therefore this physical distance is actually almost the most difficult. Yeah, very interesting about teams. And interesting, you've got that time to pause and look at which event management system, which other perhaps caterers that you might not have used before. So very interesting. Yeah, thank you for that. We're going to take this curve and look at each of the stages in more detail. So let's have a look at that first one. We could say that we're in the denial phase, and then this is where that resistance is, and then we move on to the exploration and the hope. And why I highlight these 4 phases is that what I know is that it's valuable, as Tim, you and Isabel have said, gosh, I have managed to move through. And that's the aim, that we do move through these. Some can move through quickly, some it takes longer to be able to do that. The very important thing about this that I've noticed in working with teams is that when people say, oh yeah, we're exploring options and we're really hopeful as a team, but I've got a few who are grumbling, but we'll be okay. That for me alerts my antennae that I wonder if that resistance box has been dealt with. So let's look at each of these boxes in separately. Is first that denial is that it's not happening to me. I don't have to do this. And for me, that 20th of March when my 3 months of work went whoosh, it's not happening to me, was perhaps in my head. The resistance, this will never work. You know, those grumbly people who say, I want to go back. And in fact, I wonder if you've also heard this, I can't wait until we get back to how we were before. And actually that question I have in my head is it ever going to be the same? And actually, is it not going to be the new normal that we are going to be grow accustomed to? And then the exploration is an interesting one. When we are hitting the rock bottom with the apathy, to begin to just see, oh, okay, maybe this can work. There might be a way. And certainly for me, I went and attended some webinars of a colleague of mine who got on the ball straight away how to present virtually. And I was co-hosting with him. I was learning fast. And I then saw the light kind of, oh gosh, okay, maybe I could do this.
And 5 weeks later, here I am. And then the hope where this is how we work now, and this is a better way. So I now know I've got an online offering and I'm going to have a face-to-face offering. What's valuable, though, is let's have a look at actually dealing with that resistance. And one of the things that I say that are crucial in dealing with the resistance is if we can press the pause button and look at what are people's needs in each of these areas. So that if we're working with a team, to say to the team, and this is what we know, that at that denial stage, people are wanting information and time to absorb what is happening at that point. So a bit like all of us, what did this lockdown mean? Can we go out? Can't we go out? How long can we go? No, we can't go in our cars. We're not allowed to drive. We can walk from our houses. So I stopped driving. I used to drive to uni parks with a friend and my dog. So I stopped going with a friend. I still drove with my dog. And then I thought, oh gosh, actually, don't think this is legal. So I now walk to Port Meadow from my house. That resistance, what are people needing there? And this is what I value in this model. People need a safe place to disagree, and they need to be listened to. And then in the exploration, people need to be kept in the loop and know what is the action and what are the results going to be before we move on to that. Let's see it through and where we gain the commitment. So what I move on to here is what questions as leaders or members of a team that we could ask each other when we are at these stages. And at the denial stage, we could ask, so what do we want to know? What is it that we don't know, and what do we want to know? At resistance, we could simply ask and take turns around the team, and this is whether we are virtual or not virtual. What do you think about? And in the exploration, what do we need to do? And then in the hope, who will follow up? So these are the really valuable, and for example, how this can practically happen. I ran this webinar at Unipart about 6 weeks ago, before I realized lockdown was going to happen, and got people up on pin boards and flip charts listing what in that denial phase, what did they know about, and then we were looking particularly at their 3 brands that are changing into 1 brand. And so got them to list what their responses were to each of these stages. So let's have a look at, actually, do you know what I'm going to do? Before we look at the next stage, I'm going to stop sharing and just pause and hear any responses from you in terms of that resistance and the knowing about the four boxes. Isabel.
Interesting. I think, is there a difference between a situation like that we currently have, like about coronavirus and COVID and lockdown, and a change which is seen on a sort of corporate management level, which is seen to be for the best, or as a progress, or as a better way of doing things?
Yeah.
Because I absolutely agree that there is that upward curve, and we look to do things better. And I'm questioned slightly whether in this current lockdown situation, when we come out of that and we find ourselves working remotely, dealing with things at home, dealing with, the distance and so on, and not seeing people, we're dealing with an awful lot of other stuff as well. So it's a slightly different upward curve, is it not? And things may not be better, actually, when you come out of it. We may still think, well, fine, I can work from home. That's great. I learned that I can do this now on a sensible basis. But actually, I still prefer being in the office or working with people or doing things like what I used to do.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, Isabel, do you know what I'm curious about? is the difference then between what can we control and what can't we control. And I find that fascinating in relation to this. So from my experience, I use this across the board. But what's interesting with COVID, you and I and everybody else in the UK, we have had no say. We know that it's the right thing, even though we may have our own views on what is right, but we have been told. Whereas in, as you say, in a corporate environment where perhaps in your events management at Rhodes, you're looking at, oh, this event management system might save us time, it'll be easier for all of us, and you're all going, yeah, let's use that. So I agree there is a difference, and it's however, this can be valuable in those scenarios as long as we acknowledge what can we control and what can't we control. So I haven't included that in this, but I often do that at the beginning of a session with teams, is to say, let's put on the board what are the things that are out of our control, and let's pay attention to what we can control. Any other comments? Do we move on to making endings?
Sorry, Diane, I was on mute and I was talking. I got a comment from Chris, really useful stuff. My head says explore and accept and look for opportunities. My heart is asking a million questions. Agree with Isabel that the team distancing, in brackets, and fracturing, question mark, close brackets, is probably one of the hardest to get to grips with.
Yeah. So if you'd like more on teams, watch next week. I am doing stuff on team resilience. And then in 3 weeks later, looking at how to make sure you develop a virtual team and what's essential to do that. So I welcome you back to some more webinars. These are just tasters of things that we can pay attention to. So thanks, Richard. Any more comments, Richard, that we could?
Beautifully done, Diane. It's like you're a seasoned TV presenter.
Richard, if only you knew. And you do know, Richard. So let's have a look at this final model, which is the making good endings. And this is by William Bridges, who I use his book. In fact, I keep buying his book and then giving it to clients or to friends of mine, because again, this is a valuable model to pay attention to when we are going through change. And what William Bridges says is the first stage is making endings. However, if we just pause and have a look at what's happening above the making endings, we've got part of a transition neutral zone, and we've got just the etchings of a new beginnings. And for me, the valuable thing in Bridges' model is that life isn't a make an ending, it's stopping, and then we move to transition, and then we go to new beginnings. That often we need to be coping with all three things happening at the same time. And the beautiful example with Unipart that they were exploring was they're trying to take their 3 brands that they've had for 40 years or more and to bring them into one central brand. And a comment that they made was that they hadn't thought about how they could make a good ending with their 3 previous brands and it almost say farewell. So if we're thinking about death, the way we make endings is we celebrate somebody's life in a funeral, which in this COVID time we're having to do in different ways now, and not everybody can be there or close to each other or hug each other. So making endings are important to do even when there isn't death, when we are losing stuff, when stuff is changing. It's valuable for us to do that. And having a transition neutral zone is valuable. And this is often time before we make the new beginnings. So in summary today, we've looked at the human response to change. You can all go and Google Kubler-Ross and see she was a wonderful woman who designed this many, many years ago. And then the essence of let's pay attention to dealing with that resistance and simply asking, what is it that we perhaps haven't heard that people may want to say? And then using the William Bridges, making endings. So I would like to say thank you. Any final comments about leading with change and dealing with resistance? Love to hear from you. Tim?
Well, I was just thinking when I was slightly moaning the other day at your other session about that interview I went for and I didn't get a job. But I think I can see myself going through that curve. And now I'm at the other side now. And obviously it took longer than accepting COVID-19 situation, but it's in a really healthy situation now with my colleague, actually. I'm probably one of our closest colleagues now. It's interesting how I could see different stages of that resistance and, and it's so, but that curve, the change curve, whatever we choose to call it, is you see that in lots of different parts of your life, don't you? It's not just
yes,
in lots of different ways, really.
Tim, absolutely. And that thing that happened, you did not get the job, is another. That was the change. And
you have to go. You sort of go through it, don't you? Sometimes you have to go through it, I think. And
it could happen in a day.
Yeah.
So what we know about grief is that it can take 2 years, but then and we can have anything from a day to 2 years. Sometimes people take 8 years to respond well to grief. Yeah, Isabel, your reflections. Do you want to go on off? Come off.
Is your crown gone, Isabel? Disappointing.
Come off mute. Yeah, fab.
Richard, you're just, you have too good a memory and you're just too rude, frankly.
It's rude to everybody, I think.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad because,
Keep coming back there, don't you?
No, very interesting. And yes, I think that, yes, we should probably all listen more to the people around us and take better note of what they're not saying when they're saying stuff.
Right. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. And
thanks,
there are 4 more webinars in the series. They're going to be on Mondays at 2:00. Richard, is that right?
I think that's correct, yeah. You are fixed. You're our fixture in our diaries now, Diane.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Diane. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
And Sam sent his thanks as well.